So let's look at the key attributes of these different systems. So carbon tax puts a price on carbon, sending a price signal to consumers through products, through services. It provides a governmental revenue stream that can be used to offset some of the resulting cost impacts on consumers. And it provides an incentive to end-use consumers to go acquire lower carbon intensity products, services, and behaviors. It also provides an incentive to businesses to develop lower carbon technologies, carbon capture, and geological storage, and it encourages biological sequestration of emissions in forestry and agriculture. So what it does is it provides price certainty on the price of carbon, but it doesn't necessarily provide emissions reduction certainty. Here's why. Think about it in the context of tobacco. Cigarettes are taxed incredibly highly these days. However, if you have the money to pay for it and don't care about the tax and don't care about the health implications, then you'll just go and buy the cigarettes. So a carbon tax could be the same thing. You could have an entity that has a very high footprint and just says, you know what, we can afford this price on carbon, we're just going to pay for it, we're not going to change our behavior. It doesn't really make a difference to our bottom line. So you could consequently have a situation where you have price certainty on the price of carbon, but not necessarily an emissions reduction success. Now, there are other factors that play in. A tax can be adjusted over time to achieve its desired level of emissions reductions, but again, you may have a situation where very high emitters have more wherewithal to absorb a price of carbon that can really be problematic. But the need to tweak it also creates political uncertainty. If you're making long-term business decisions and you don't know what the price of carbon is going to be, then it's very difficult to factor that into your decisions. So while there are some perks to it in the flexibility, that flexibility in and of itself can create uncertainty that's problematic. Now, other key considerations to think about in the context of carbon tax: who's paying? Is it market-wide? Are you targeting specific sectors? What rate are you setting it at? Are you including all greenhouse gases? Are you treating them equally? Are you taxing different gases at different levels? And how are you going to go about administering, monitoring, and enforcing this program? Now let's compare that to the key attributes of a cap and trade system. Now, the cap and trade system, again, limits the amount of pollution that can be released, measured in billions of tons of CO2 equivalent per year. It sets an economy-wide level that is allocated to emitters, and then that cap declines on a prescribed schedule. So generally, you're going to do it to cover major sources of emissions, like electric power generation, natural gas, transportation fuel use, manufacturers. And you're going to establish a permitting or allowance system to emit, and then you're going to put them into an auction or distribution environment where the market, the regulated, can then dictate who's going to supply and who's going to demand. And you just create a rule base that monitors and administers that market. Now, the ability of regulated entities to buy and sell the allowances provides the compliance flexibility and creates the carbon market. The reduction schedule enables entities that need a longer horizon of planning and need certainty over that horizon planning or relative certainty to be able to plan ahead. Now, what this does is the cap and trade system can provide certainty on reductions, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't provide certainty on the carbon price or the economic impacts. The reason for that is you can dictate what the ultimate volume of emissions is going to look like, but if you're not quite certain who's going to be able to perform under the cap, then you don't know what the supply of emissions allowances is going to look like. And if you set a cap that ends up being too easy for folks to get under, then the supply becomes very large and the price will be very cheap. Alternatively, if you set the cap and it turns out that it's more difficult for folks to get under than anticipated, then the price of that allowance will go up significantly. So there can be implications for both of those outcomes that can be positive or negative. Now, if we look at a cap and dividend system, this also operates like a cap and trade program, except that in this particular case, all of the emissions allowances are owned by and optioned by, or I should say controlled by, the government. So in other words, they are not going to put this into the marketplace and let the marketplace dictate. It's going to control the number of emissions allowances that are available to begin with, regardless of how many entities are under the cap and by how many tons. So the result is that you get a little bit more certainty under both the reduction and the price because it can control the supply. The resulting revenues from these systems are also then can be redistributed to businesses and consumers, particularly those that may get pushed into the market less competitive because of it. It also provides a little more ease in the redistribution of revenues to offset the impacts of the carbon price. It reduces the opportunities for behaviors that are kind of undesirable that might occur in a cap and trade system. What you're trying to do with this is you're trying to drive long-term upward positively trending behavior. Under a cap and trade system, you have entities that are playing just for the market and not necessarily moving on that upward trend that you're looking for, the increased reductions. And so that's one of the perks here. But the other piece is because the revenue now is all coming into the government can then look at industries that are disproportionately affected and do things to make to reduce those burdens across the industry sector as a whole.